So good morning, everyone. So I'm Winter, and I'll be facilitating the final workshop session for the conference today. So this workshop that you've joined is all about sustainable travel solutions. And as you'll see, I'm joined today by Sophie Elterman from Ghent City Council. It's wonderful to have you here today, Sophie. Thank you for joining. So we have Sophie with us today to speak about the transformative work undertaken through the council across a range of different initiatives to make Ghent an active, travel-friendly and less car-dependent place. So the workshop will cover this work spanning a number of different key priority areas, including infrastructure and bike availability and behaviour change. So Sophie has been working since September 2019 for the Office of Deputy Mayor Philip Watu. I'm so sorry if that's not correct.
Yeah, that's fine.
Please correct me. Who implemented what was a controversial circulation plan in 2017. And Sophie has been working as a consultant in traffic and mobility for over 10 years. So Sophie, I'll pass over to you to present now, but just before I do, I'd like to encourage everyone who's here with us today to please use the chat function to share all your questions and thoughts, reflections. We'd really love to see an active discussion happening there, and we have plenty of time at the end allocated to the Q&A. So yeah, please get your questions in. And now, the floor is yours, Sophie.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I hope my first slide, how to become a city for people, is visible.
Yeah, I can see it. And just a note to anyone, if it's looking small on your screen, you can press the enlarge screen button, which is a square that's in the bottom right corner of the screen.
All right. So I would like to tell you about how Ghent changed very quickly. And it was done through a quite controversial circulation plan. So basically, I think this is a very familiar image. This is what Ghent looked like in the 70s, 80s, and in the 90s. A city, a very nice city, medieval city center, but full of cars. Public transport was stuck together with the cars. There was very little space for pedestrians, for cyclists. The city wasn't a very nice place, so a lot of people left. And this is something that really needed to change. So also shop owners were not happy anymore. So it was just time to change. The idea was, well, cars really take up a lot of space, and a city should not be a place for cars, but for people. So if you could take away cars, it would increase livability, it would increase safety, and it would increase your accessibility as a city, because of course, the more cars you attract as a city, the less accessible you will be. And also it will limit basically your growth in terms of population, and population needs houses. They also need work, so they need shops and so on. So not to limit that growth, then you have to take into account, well, we can't grow if we keep on adding cars. So that was the main focus. So we had a look at a lot of other cities who were advanced, like a lot of cities in Holland, or like Copenhagen, for instance. And we saw a lot of very nice infrastructure for public transport, infrastructure for bikes, bridges, tunnels, and so on. But the thing is, the problem was that infrastructure really takes a long time. I mean, I think you probably also know that from the minute you start planning to reallocate space or to rebuild a road or something, it often takes 10 or more years to really get things going. So we needed to find a shortcut. And this we found by way of the circulation plan. So I'll explain a little bit more about it. So the challenge that we had was that, so this is like a scheme of the city, a schematic view of the city, which the yellow is the historic city center, and the blue line around it, the light blue line, I mean, on the outside, is basically the inner ring road. And we saw a lot of traffic was going through really through the heart of the city. So only 51% was really destination traffic, and the other 49%, which is nearly one car out of two, was just going through the city or making tours within specific areas of the city. So basically traffic that we didn't really need, that was not really necessary. So it had just too much motorized traffic in the city. So we came up with a circulation plan to keep the traffic without the destination in the city out. So the city was divided in 7 zones, one pedestrian zone in the heart of the city, that's the purple area, and then 6 zones around it. They all have a different color because the idea is that you cannot enter from from red to green going through the city. So you have to take the ring road. So there is no exchange of motorized city between the zones, no more going through traffic through the city center. So everyone who wants to be somewhere in a zone needs to use the ring road. Fortunately, we have some natural barriers. We have quite a lot of natural barriers in Ghent because there's 2 rivers flowing through it and they meander through the city. So that was quite an easy way to divide the city in these zones, but because the only barrier that you have to create is taking out a bridge, or at least making it not accessible for motorized city anymore, not motorized traffic anymore. So the whole plan, from like planning to implementation, only took 2 years, which is really, really quick. And the implementation was done basically overnight. So by using blocks and polars and paint and NPR cameras, we could really quickly divide the city into zones. We also used plants and benches, which made the gain that you got through the circulation plan, so the space that you gain if you take out the cars, was immediately like a qualitative touch to those public spaces. So we used really quite cheap elements to implement the plan. The whole idea was, of course, that this was temporary, and a little by little, we are trying to make it more definitive by like taking out concrete and things like that. So to give it a even more qualitative effect. What were the results of the plan? Well, we had a huge increase in numbers of cyclists because they felt much safer. It's much more agreeable if there is less cars in the street. It's also faster in the city center. So if you need to use a car to go all the way around, you're probably faster with a bike going just through the city center. So there are no limits for bikes or for cyclists if they want to go through the city center. The limits are only for motorized traffic. We had an increased number of public transport users, but not that high. Within the city center, actually, we had decreased travel times for cars, because before cars was just stuck in traffic, and now people who really need to be in the city center, they are confronted with less traffic. Of course, we have less transit traffic. That was the whole goal of the plan. We have a huge decrease in accidents, so less accidents with cyclists and pedestrians, because you should just have less conflicts. We have improved air quality, so we have a lot of street canyons. Our streets are very narrow. The buildings are not that high, like 3 or 4 levels, but because they are so narrow, the bad air just gets stuck within this street canyon. So this is also improved definitely in the city center, and the livability, of course, increased tremendously. We have we gained a lot of space, so we were able to to provide like restaurants and cafes with more space for terraces, which really makes it very nice to walk around and to hang around in the city, because the streets are just more lively when you have people in the streets instead of cars. So in terms of numbers, so in 2012, we had about 55% of individual motorized cities transport within the city center. And that decreased to 39 in 2018. So that's 1 year after the implementation of the circulation plan. And then we had actually aimed for 2030 to get to 27% of motorized traffic, and 35% for cycling, walking 18%, and 20% collective transport. But our numbers show that already in 2019, the number of cyclists, we already actually reached the goal. So we have to reset our goals for 2030. The circulation plan, so it was implemented in 2017, but that doesn't mean that it was the first thing that happened. Actually, it was one step in a process that was already going on. So in 1995, there was, way before my time, there was already a cycling plan. Then we had a circulation plan for the inner city, so really the historical center, the purple area that you saw. Then we had added a parking plan in 2016, and there is one missing. In 2015, there was a sustainable mobility plan. Then, of course, the circulation plan in 2017. And now we are working on area mobility plans. So also areas around the city center, we are also working to get their own mobility plan. So it doesn't stand alone. It's really a process of a few years. So this is, what I just mentioned. We're now working on the mobility plans for the outskirts. And the goal is to increase livability and safety, just like we did in the city center. So it became very agreeable to live in the city center. And of course, people around the city, they also would like to have better air and safer roads for cycling and walking and more space. So the whole idea to get going through traffic out is still the main way to do this. And also something that we learned from the circulation plan for the city center is to intensify the participation process. So this is really a big part of the effort that we do now in the different areas. We really increased on the participation process. Also still going on is investing in cycling passages, cycling highways, bridges, and cycling streets, and also participation through living streets, or temporary play streets, and so on. So this is like a continuing process. Oops, I think I skipped one. Yeah. Public transport, of course, is a very important part also of the whole story. We have free tickets for kids up to 14. We also invest in night buses, because the public transport that is offered isn't providing this night buses. So this is something that the city invests in, to have extra transport later in the night. And also our park and rides are connected with a free shuttle that is paid by the city. So the public transport story in Belgium is quite complex. It's a regional. It's organized at a regional level. So as a city, we don't always have a lot of impact on what is going on and what the investments are doing and stuff. So sometimes we have to add a little bit to it to have a really good offer. Yeah. Something that we also work very hard on is activating or implementing cycling culture. So we developed something that's called the Fiets, the bicycle embassy, which is paid or subsidized by the city. And they have different, they do different things to support cycling. So they offer they have an offer for students. Ghent is a university city, so we have many thousands of students, and students can hire a bike for a whole year at a very low rate. They also do activities like free air and fat offer. So a few times a year, they will go with this cargo bike, and then wherever they're standing, you can just stop, and they will help you like grease your chain of your bike, or get your tires a little bit of extra air. And they also have a few spots where you can go to and repair your bike either yourself, or you can get help to get your bike repaired, to make sure that you can get home. So we make sure that there is no real conflict between a professional bike shop or bike repair shop and this bike embassy. So we were very aware that we could not like eat the private sector with this activity. And I would like to conclude with a very nice image. This is a square that was recently, like a year ago, renovated. And the picture on the left, the small picture, is what it looked like just before the implementation of the circulation plan. And because this is really in the city center, and because we have now less cars in the city center, we also need less parking space in the city center. So this square was really a parking lot. And because, we kind of did not use the parking anymore, we could renovate it to this very nice green area. And anytime you go there, any time of day, there are a lot of people just hanging out there, using the picnic benches. There is a little play area here with trampolines, so kids can jump on it. So people are just like walking their dogs, having an ice cream, having lunch there, meeting friends. It's a really nice area really in the heart of the city. And I think that was it. I went through it very quickly. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, so I'm gonna stop share my presentation so I can maybe see you.
Everyone, yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Sophie. That was really inspiring. I don't know about everyone else, but yeah, I think I want to go and move over to Ghent now, because it just sounds brilliant. And yeah, I've just reminded everyone in the chat to get their questions in. So I'll just check, have I had any through yet? Not quite yet. But one thing I wanted to just comment on before we start the questions was that we'd really love to create a bit of a dialogue. So if anyone wants to actually come on screen and ask a question themselves, or have a bit of a chat and start a conversation, that would be fantastic. All you need to do is just sort of request. There should be a little panel at the very top, or a little button that says request audio and video. So yeah, feel free to do that, and then I can kind of approve you. And yeah, I can see we've got a question through already. And this one, oh, sorry.
Yeah, they're coming in, I can see.
Fantastic. So Nicola, we'll start with you. You're very welcome to jump on screen if you like. And I can begin, or we can wait a moment to see if you wanted to come on. Otherwise, I can get the ball rolling with that question there.
I'll just answer the question.
Yeah.
So it's about what the participation exercise we did with the communities.
Yeah, brilliant.
So basically, this is a thing that is going on. So we have 7 areas. We are now working on 2, and when those 2 are done, we'll move on to the next 2. So there is a very intense participation process. So it's actually the whole process takes 2 years from like the start where we announce, hey, we're going to do something in your area. And the first step is to really have an open debate about it. So we invite people. That was before Corona. During Corona, we had like digital meetings. But before really at the beginning, we go to people, to the population, but also to people to shop owners, people who own a company there. To ask them like, how would you improve your neighborhood? What are the main challenges? What are the problems? Things like that, to really get a good view of how people look at their neighborhood. Of course, we have our own data, but we put the 2 together. And the next step is that we organize 3 scenarios for that neighborhood. Then we go back with those 3 scenarios. We ask the feedback, like things like, no, this is crazy, or this is just practically not possible because I cannot take that turn, or something like that. So we collect a lot of information about that. And then the next step is that we develop a final scenario, and then we go back with the final scenario to the citizens to explain why we made this or that choice. So that's the whole process. And people could respond, like we had a physical meeting, like an info market. There were online, you could get everything online to us. We different channels. We had talks with specific groups, like shop owners, with schools, with people who are working with people who are in poverty. All kinds of target groups were contacted. So participation was is a really big important step. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Sophie. I guess that kind of made me think about this contrast that I sort of saw with the original circulation plan and kind of how that seemed to have been implemented, and then this new, the 7 different
the area mobility plans.
And that contrast, would you say that that was sort of the case, that there was a difference, that you maybe built on what you did originally with that, or was there consultations and co-designs that went into that original?
You mean in talking about participation, or?
Yeah, the participation aspect seems to be maybe more.
Yeah, it's much more developed. It's much more elaborate. It's just the target group is also a little bit different. So within the inner city, of course, there are also people living there, but also a lot of people who just come in there for work and things like that. But with the neighborhoods, this is really places where people live for a very long time. People buy a house there and they raise their families and things like that. So the target group was a little bit different, but it's definitely also something that we learned, that we had to involve people more. I think this is probably something that other cities also they learn. You learn by doing. And I think 10 years ago, participation was just not on the table that much. But now you can't like change a stone in the street without doing a participation process. So it definitely evolved a lot.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll pick up more on that, because I can see there's a couple of questions that sort of touch on the reactions originally. So we've got lots of questions covered, so I'll jump in and see what we've got. So there was a question on Julia. Actually, I'll go to the beginning so we can cover them. There was one which is Mary, thank you. Do you have a city centre market? If so, how do you organise the van deliveries? Also taxis in the centre? And I have seen another question which was around there wanting to find out, can buses access the city centre? Can the public transport access that? So if you could kind of touch on that.
Okay. Public transport is going right through the heart of our city. We have trams and buses, which is sometimes very dense. Really, at the city center, there's like a bus tram, exchange. Taxis are allowed in the city center. Actually, we had to partner up with them because buses and trams don't ride like 24/7. So we know that we really need them. So they were important. They got like fixed pickup zones within our center. We have regular meetings with them to just, to get the communication going. They can also use the bus lanes, the taxis, so they're not stuck in traffic. Of course, bikes and pedestrians, they can go anywhere. For people who are living in the area, so the heart is like a pedestrian area, a car free zone. So that one is kind of controlled by ANPR cameras. People who live in that area and who have a parking space like under their building or something, they get a license. So there's basically a whole system where they just like give their car license and the name and everything, and they can get a permit, or they're like in a database, and then if they go through the camera, they won't get fined. They can also have up to maximum 10 cars. Like they can enter up to 10 cars a day. Like if they have a visitor or somebody needs to drop off something or something like that. Well, it's depends how many people live on the address. So there is a whole system for that. I think that was like for who is available of going through the city. We also have permits for people who do construction work. So they have to ask for a permit, and then they will get one for the amount of time that they're doing the work. So it's quite an administrative burden on our services. But it was the only way to on one hand like cut back the traffic in the city center, but keep your city also attractive to live in and manageable for people who live there. The like deliveries are very restricted too. So in the city center, you have to deliver before 11 or after 6. Because between 10 and 6 the shops are open and a lot of people are in the city. And in the area for where the students are, so we have one area which is also pedestrianized, where there are a lot of bars and stuff. It's a whole area. There we did it the other way around. So there the deliveries have to be done before 6 in the evening, of course, because after 6 students are going out and there's a lot of people in the streets. So there's a lot of systems in place to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a really unique setup that you have. It's very, very, very interesting to hear. Yeah, I guess that kind of the different layers of the, allowing people to sort of have those maximum amount of trips and all that sort of thing. So that's very, really interesting. And I think you kind of covered off a couple of questions around the, managing perhaps some people who found it challenging, removing completely kind of access to the centre. So you had these kind of, this leeway that you had for certain people in place, which is interesting. We've got lots of questions to cover, so I'm going to keep moving on. So I guess you sort of have touched on it already, but I mean, in practice, how did you manage the kickback? So someone's asking, how did you deal with all the presumably angry drivers who can't now park in the centre? What was that like in practice?
Can you repeat the question? Because is it about the number of cars or?
So I guess it's a question around the parking in a way. presumably also access. So how did you deal with the kind of reaction to these changes for people that wanted to park or wanted to travel through in the way that they did before?
Right. Yeah. So about the parking, there are a few parking like garages, underground garages that are really smack in the middle of the city, and we kept them accessible. So basically, if you want to go shopping in the city center and you really, really want to do it with your car, it's still possible. We always tell the story that the city is still accessible, but maybe in another way. So like the parkings are still accessible in the same way, but going through the city with your car is just no, it's a no-go. It's you have to go around. So of course people were very like it was a controversial plan. Before it was implemented, I think about 46% of the population was like before. After the implementation, it's the other way around. So more than half of people who live in Ghent are very happy with the plan. The thing that we had with communication was that especially shop owners before the implementation were like screaming, "Oh, we're not going to be accessible anymore." The result of that was that people outside Ghent thought, Ghent is not accessible anymore. So they really kind of made their own bad communication, and they're now turning around. So slowly, but they're now turning around. So it's just you have to make sure that people still know that Ghent is accessible, and it still is accessible. You can even get to the center with your by car, because the parkings are still accessible in the same way as before. It's just like going through, or that's the thing that's not possible anymore. But we saw, and I'm sure that the question must come up or has come up economically. That's the question I always get. So we do see a change in the type of shops that are in the city center, but we also see the same change in cities that don't have a circulation plan. But we think that the change in Ghent is going faster. So the like big chain stores, they are having a difficult time everywhere because they are most affected by like online shopping. So we see in our main street that the big chains, like they're moving away or whatever. But we do see like a whole new type of shops coming up, like more personal shops, like private shop owners who really like have a unique selling idea, and that's the type of shops that we really see popping up everywhere. Like hotels and restaurants are popping up. There is on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, if you don't make a reservation in the city for a restaurant, you just won't get in. Everything is full. So I would dare to say that, like economically, I don't think this was a bad plan. Definitely not. I mean, people, they really enjoy walking around, hanging around in the squares, having a drink on the terrace. We have more space for terraces too, so I think that's been a good thing.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's great. And I think you have kind of covered a couple of questions there as well, which is great. We've still got lots more coming through. So there was one earlier from Rebecca who has asked what happened to traffic levels on the ring road? Was there a change? Did you measure that change or?
Yeah. Okay. So of course, that was what everyone was saying. Oh, it's going to be a disaster on the ring road. It's going to be much more stuck than it is now. What we saw was actually not the case. Not if you take into account that the traffic is increasing anyhow. So without a circulation plan, it would be much worse. So we actually saw a lot of evaporating traffic. I don't know if everyone is familiar with the term, but so apparently a lot of people they they use a car, or they do a transportation or a move or whatever. But maybe that's not really necessary, and so we saw a lot of traffic that just we don't really know where it went. So but it definitely did not increase like the traffic lines around the city center.
Interesting. And that sort of connects to another question, which was around the diverting of traffic around the traffic flow around other areas of the city. I mean, of course, you would have seen, well, you completely changed those kind of the flow across the city. You would have seen changes, but was there any issues that that kind of cropped up?
Not in terms of traffic really, but we do, and that's actually part of another plan, our parking plan. We implemented also paid parking. And you see that when you implement paid parking in one zone and you don't, or it's less in the other zone next door, that people will just like go there. So this is kind of an overflow effect, but it's more related to parking than to car traffic, really.
Okay, interesting. And one comment we had that actually picks up on that as well is around parking was Marie has asked, considerable income is generated by central car parking by my local authority, which is Cambridge City Council. Did you experience similar challenges? Obviously, you mentioned that the car parks are actually open, but they might be private car parks as opposed to parking on the roads, which is managed by the council. So what does that picture sort of look like? Again.
So as for we do get a lot of our income from parking. So we have I think about 7 parking garages. Some are owned by the city, others are owned by the city, but they're kind of in a concession. But we do have an income of them. But we also have a large space in the street. I mean, you can still. It's only really the city center that is pedestrianized, but that was a big part was already pedestrianized before the circulation plan. We enlarged it now in 2017, but it was already there. And the other zones around it, if you remember the blue and the yellow and the green zone, apart from the circulation plan, there is a parking plan, and depending how close you get to the center, the more expensive it is to park. So this didn't really change with the implementation of the circulation plan. So this is kind of 2 separate stories. So the circulation plan didn't affect the income from the parking. So but we are, like, this is also something that is going on, renewing our parking plan, just to make sure that the overflow is limited, and also to keep pushing people to get rid of their own personal car. So by making it more expensive, by also choosing to reallocate the space you have towards cyclists and pedestrians, and often, then you have to decrease the number of parking spaces, because they take, I mean, in the street at least, they take so much space. So these are very hard choices, and they're politically very difficult. So it's a struggle every time that we want to implement a cycling path or something, and the parking space has to go. But on the side, like I mentioned, that we want to reduce car ownership and car dependence. We really do a lot for car sharing too. So this is one of the elements that is also very strongly supported by the city. So, and we try to work on car ownership and car use in really different areas.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really interesting answer. I think it's a challenging one. I suppose in some ways to advise on, because it's this kind of mixture of lots of different elements that might look different between different places, but I suppose also very much I guess a systems change or a behaviour change kind of thing as well, in the sense that, yeah, I suppose, you know, that income might need to be thought out. So there's a few more questions. We've got maybe time for one more. And I thought there was an interesting one that came up around whether Ghent is considering zero emission only access to the traffic-free area.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a very good question, actually. Of course, a low emission zone in a traffic-free area is not gonna make a lot of effect because you already have very few traffic in a traffic-free area. But we do have a low emission zone. In January 2020, our low emission zone was implemented within the city ring road. So everything within the roads, within the ring roads, is now a low emission zone. We do have like one hospital in our low emission zone, and there is a corridor. So we made sure that that was still accessible, and one parking lot who is just within the low emission zone but has like a bypass. That one is also accessible. So that one, those two elements we took out of the low emission zone. But in terms of impact on your air quality, we noticed that actually the implementation of the circulation plan has a larger impact than the implementation of the low emission zone. So just taking out the cars out of your city center, that has a bigger impact than the low emission zone itself.
Thank you. That's brilliant. And I think someone just asked then, what is defined as low emission?
I don't know the categories by heart, but I can find out. But this is also something that is going gradually. So we are getting stricter year by year.
Okay. Yeah, brilliant. All right, well, I think we're going to have to wrap up there because we've reached the end of the workshop allocated time. But once again, thank you so much, Sophie. That's been really interesting and insightful. And thank you everyone for your questions and for coming along. It's been brilliant. I'm sorry if I wasn't able to pick up on one of the questions. We have got another break, which you can spend doing some networking or exploring the expo booths before the panel. And if you do want more information from Sophie, how might people be able to find out more about what Ghent's doing? Is there?
I'm happy to put my email in the chat. So.
Okay, brilliant. That's fantastic.
There.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. So if you want to leave, you just sort of head up to that button on the top right-hand corner of the page which says leave. You can jump out and then sort of navigate over to the networking or to the main stage, which will be in about, I think, 15 to 10 minutes. But yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.